Okay, there's a few things I want to start out with this morning. We just got out for lunch. Eric Parker is on the stand. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone that has shown up inside this courtroom. We filled one half of the courtroom, one half side. I can tell you last time when Eric testified, we had that half side filled many days, and when he was on the stand, that side was filled and half of the other side. So there's one thing that I'm going to say and I'm going to put out there, and we can all pray, but we also have to do work. And I put out a post about lifting others up, and it really worked well. And I think if we try to make that a daily thing, but now I'm going to push it a little bit further. I want you to find someone you don't agree with and try to find one thing that maybe you do agree with that person with. And if we can focus on that, if you can lift someone you don't like up because of standing in the same grounds with that person on one thing. The division that happened between the last trial and this trial, it's been very bad, and it has affected this trial. We went through many of this trial with fewer supporters. I can tell you that it kept me down many days in between, and it wasn't because of this person or that person. It was because of everyone hurting and what we were doing to each other. And if we can't get along together and agree to disagree on things and stand together where we do agree on things, then we are not going to make it through this. It will take all of us to be able to fight through this, and united we stand and divided we fall. So I'm really glad for everyone that has been able to make it down here, and I put this out to you with your prayers today. If you can find one person that maybe you don't agree with and find something that you do agree with that person on and lift up there, and maybe we can find a way to get along and further this movement. So now inside today, Eric Parker's on the stand. We went back in, the judge demolished him. She said, "I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, even though I think you are purposely violating this court order." The prosecution said he should not be allowed to say what he heard, that people in the wash would be shot, that he would not be able to talk about snipers on the mesa, that he could not say that he was afraid that he would be shot or that others would be shot, that he can't bring any of that up because that goes to a legal standing for a defense that is not available to him. He is not available of self-defense or defense of others because they do not see any overreach, any overuse of force by the BLM. So I don't know what constitutes an overuse of force. I would think snipers and helicopters and all of these things and pointing weapons at unarmed people. They say that that's because the people in the wash moved forward when they were told not to, and that they were the aggressors, and so the BLM had every right to point weapons at them. They said that in the courtroom. The judge actually disagreed, and she said that he can testify about what he saw and what he heard. He can provide testimony of what he saw as long as it's not going to a self-defense or defense of others defense, because that would be going to jury nullification. So there's some kind of gray area that we're dancing around upstairs. So he talks about his decision to go to Bunkerville on the 10th, about that showed up late, and that he knew that there were court orders and they were arguing about grazing rights. He is objected to at that point. They can't go into any of that information. Then finally it was your decision to go to Bunkerville to get the cattle back? That's what he can talk about. He can't talk about the First Amendment speech zone, Ammon Bundy being tased, Margaret Houston being thrown to the ground, the police and paramedics refusing to come. He can't talk about Dave Bundy being arrested and beat by multiple BLM agents on the side of the road. All he can say is, no, my decision to go had nothing to do with cattle. He talks about calling the Euclid stockyard and that he was wondering what that was about because he had heard they were rounding up cattle but not selling them off. I know one of the jury questions inside already was if the Cliven was going to be paid for his cattle after they were auctioned off as per, is it the Fifth Amendment? And they took that part off of the question and just asked if he was going to be paid for it. He talked about his plan to go and protest. And he also talked about not knowing Ricky, getting in the vehicle because of a problem with lack of parking space and being able to get down there. The fact that he'd camped next to Ricky and that he really didn't know him or even his name at the time. The fact that he brought his weapon in the vehicle and didn't have it at the stage because he didn't want to leave it in the tent. And he actually was able to bring up the fact that he got his weapon out of the truck because he heard about people up on the mesa. He wasn't allowed to say that they had guns or snipers. He just said people up on the mesa. That was objected to. They then went to enter a piece of evidence showing people on the mesa. That was immediately objected to. The jury didn't get to see it, but they can tell that something's being held from them, and there was a sidebar. We came back, that was sustained. We cannot bring that piece of evidence in. I would be surprised today if we get any piece of evidence in. With how much video, how much photographic evidence there is, we can't get it in. The other day they were talking about they don't know what the diameter of the end of his rifle is, yet they bring that rifle into the courtroom and use it as evidence. They have the rifle here. They could go and measure it easily, but they won't allow that evidence in. So I'm telling you that I will come down here and be shocked and amazed if we get even one piece of evidence in today. So what we're going on is we only have the testimony of Eric Parker, and then hopefully the testimony of Scott Drexler will start Monday. Your prayers are needed, but we also need to work on solving this divide and finding a way to push forward and focus on what we agree upon and not what we differ on, not what we don't agree on, but come together. We have to find our common ground. So that's all I have for right now. We're out to lunch, so hopefully we will come back at the end of the day and Eric will be done testifying or he will go into Monday.
Can you clarify how the jury is not seeing any of these decisions that are being made?
So all the decisions being made, all the arguments are done outside of the jury's ears. They've brought in a bowl of candy to distract the jury. They play music and they all go to a sidebar. These sidebars last 20 plus minutes. I remember the one day we had more sidebar than we had court. I believe that this is, they do see some of it, but also to them it's like a break time. They get extra break time. They get to chat and communicate with each other. And so I don't know how well it is going over. None of the arguments are going in front of the jury. They don't even get to hear why they are arguing about what piece of evidence. They just called sidebar and they do all of the arguing outside of the ears of the jury. So what really concerns me here is that the difference from the first trial to this trial. The first trial had truth. There was truth allowed in the courtroom. They put everyone under oath. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Except for on the stand, they're not allowed to tell the truth, and the truth is not coming out. In fact, there's a court order, and the judge even mentioned the court order in the courtroom today, that you're not allowed to bring in the truth. And the difference between last trial and this trial is we had the evidence. They played the videos. They entered evidence. We were allowed to enter our own evidence. Like I said, if I come down at the end of the day and we've even gotten one piece of evidence in, I will be shocked. I don't believe it's going to happen. What they've done this trial is they have thrown everything they possibly can. They stacked the jury. They prevented our defense. They prevented any reason that we can talk about state of mind, the reason that he went. They pretty much took his entire testimony from the last time and broke it down and said, you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't talk about why you went. All you're allowed to get up there and say, yes, I was there, yes, I did that. So he is trying to testify with all of these parameters, and it's got to be frustrating and it's got to be hard. And it's good to see half of a courtroom full for him. But I know that it weighs on him to know that last time he had half a courtroom and half full. And I don't know what to say. What are they going to do next time? If they still get a hung jury in there, what could they possibly do next time? Will it be trial by firing squad? Because I don't see how they could stack it against us any more than they already have. And they are still losing. They are still showing that there is something going on here. So I can pray for all the jury to see that they are not getting the truth, and I can pray for the prosecution to slip up, and I can pray that Eric keeps his ground and is able to get truth out.
People keep on asking the question, where is the defense's evidence?
Where is our evidence? We're not allowed to bring our evidence in. We tried to bring in, we can't even bring in Eric's longbow. We were denied witnesses that the prosecution brought last time. Dennis Michael Lynch proffered his testimony yesterday, and that's not even allowed in the courtroom. They're not allowed to bring that. They're not, and they said, even with all the testimony that was proffered yesterday, they said, well, you can proffer all that, and if there's proof that there was overreach, there was excessive use of force, then you can have the defense of self-defense of others. Even with all those people that proffered yesterday and said there were weapons pointed at me, I was in fear of my life, they are not allowed. She still denied them the self-defense and defense of others defense. So now what they're saying is you can't bring any evidence that goes to self-defense or defense of others. You can't talk about the things that go to self-defense or defense of others. He can't say, I got behind the Jersey barrier because they had snipers pointing rifles at me. He can't say that. So how are you supposed to be able to tell the truth when you are prevented? Even the prosecution's evidence that they brought in last time, they're not bringing in. And the judge, I quote, the judge herself previously in this trial said, when the jury asked, well, when are we going to get to some good evidence? When are we going to see all this evidence? She said, in some court cases, they don't even have any evidence, and you're supposed to remain on testimony alone. She's trying to allude that there isn't all this evidence. Unfortunately for them, the FBI agent comes in and says, well, I timestamp all this stuff based on aerial footage, based on Flynn video, based on Shalakis video, based on all these other videos that they haven't even seen. So I'm hoping that they see through this. But what else can they possibly pull over their eyes? Because whatever they can, they are going to do inside.
Awesome.
That's it.
So we're back down here at Las Vegas Federal Courthouse in Las Vegas. It's the trial for Eric Parker, Stephen Stewart, Scott Drexler, and Ricky Loveland. We're in our lunch break right now. We got Eric Parker back on the stand after that lengthy sidebar we had when the government was objecting to all of Eric Parker's testimony. The judge, after that lengthy sidebar and break, we got Eric Parker back on the stand. The first question she asked Eric Parker, and this is not with the witnesses or the jurors yet back in there, she asked him, does he want to continue testifying? And he said, yes, I absolutely want to continue testifying. So then she called the jurors back in. It seemed like to me, personally sitting in the courtroom, they were trying to put so much pressure on Eric Parker, and as they did all these other witnesses, and trying to keep him from testifying. They do not want any testimony for the defense. And they came to a conclusion, and they're allowing Eric to testify on certain parts. And the government is still continuing to object on any testimony that's coming from the snipers on the hill. And Jeff Marchese is doing an awesome job right now. He is pushing forward, and he's trying to get this testimony out. And I feel like that we might get it out before it's over with. These certain words have been brought out, such as sniper, First Amendment zone. These things have been brought out, but it's slowly coming out of Eric's testimony. And if Jeff Marchese doesn't bring it out right, it will not be allowed. So he's having to reword a lot of things to bring Eric's state of mind out. Why Eric went there in the first place. Did he know anybody there? what led up to the circumstances on why he did what he did that day, why he was behind that Jersey barrier, crouched down, laying prone, all these things that are trying to make him look scary. And that 30 minutes of actual what they call fame of him being on that bridge was such a short time, and what led up to all that. They didn't even want him to bring up a telescope, testify about it, that he could look through it, and he looked up on that mesa where the snipers were. That was objected to, and that's where we kind of left off at lunch. We're hoping when we get back, this part of the testimony will come out. A lot of these things...
What did they put up, John, in regard? They put a photo up.
They put a photo up. It was Exhibit 57. It's a government exhibit. It's been in the last trial. It was in this trial, and but they objected to that exhibit, that photo of the snipers up on the mesa, and they did not want that to be shown to the jurors again during his testimony. We're hoping that it get brought up afterwards. That's where we left off. That's where they call a lunch break. We'll probably have some arguments about that before the jurors come back.
Also, just to clarify, the objection was sustained, but the photo was up in front of the jury, but it was sustained, and he's going to continue on. The case is going to continue on after lunch.
He's going to continue on, but he's going to try to lead up so he can still show that more and talk about it. Get it out of Eric's get it out of his statement. One thing that was brought up is about, and I always had this question, is the government brought it up in testimony in the last trial. They claimed Eric Parker called the stockyard and made threats of some sort and talked to them for some sort of time. They would not let him explain that. This time, it got explained that he did, yes, call the stockyard where the cattle were supposed to be taken to after the BLM impounded them. I think that stockyard was in Utah.
Euclid.
Where is it?
Euclid, California.
Euclid, California. That was one of them. Did he call the California one or the Utah one?
Yeah, there's two of them.
There was two of them. So he called one of them, and probably the one in California, but he never got a hold of anybody. That's what didn't get brought out.
And he lost the urge.
He lost the urge to continue to try to call them. So he didn't even talk to anybody. So he didn't make any threats. He didn't even get to talk to them to ask them the questions that he wanted to ask. The last jurors did not get to hear that part.
And of course, the government never presented any evidence of any threat.
Exactly.
They only tried to paint a picture of it with no evidence, no recording, no audio, because there is none.
There is none. And that's what Jeff Marchese pointed out today for Eric. He turned around in court and he pointed back to the government. It says they brought this stuff up. They brought it up in their witnesses and stuff. And Myrie, he objected to that and said, Your Honor, I am objecting to the defense here pointing at us. And the judge said, don't do that anymore. She kind of scolded Jeff Marchese and told him not to be doing any more pointing in the courtroom. So that was interesting there too. We had a couple more sidebars. Each one of these sidebars have been quite lengthy. That longest one, I'm guessing, lasted almost 20 minutes.
25, because it was about 20 minutes when I got there. There was another 5 to 10 more minutes.
Yes.
It was like 25 almost.
Lasted quite a while.
Yeah.
And this last one lasted another 5 or 10 minutes or so, I think. But it was some quite lengthy sidebars. They're doing some arguing behind the scenes there. And they're trying to stop this totally. I noticed one of the jurors, and I don't know if this means anything or not, but juror number 8, when he came into the courtroom this morning, he had a pamphlet in his pocket, and I was trying to look at it. It was some kind of book or pamphlet, and it had some kind of picture on it. At first, I thought it was a pocket constitution of some sort, but I couldn't see it very clearly. But I noticed when he left the courtroom and he came back, he didn't have it any longer in his pocket. So that was kind of interesting to see that he was also carrying something in his pocket. That I know Andrea Parker had some updates earlier, and I'm sure she's done it more.
It's below this video
detail.
right now.
Okay, go watch hers. Hers is probably more in detail on some of the things. She takes very good notes. One thing I wanted to comment on is after Eric retook the stand afterwards, he bowed his head for quite some time and prayed before the jurors were called back into the room. So that's where we're at. We're fixing to go back up to court. We're going to hear the rest of Eric's testimony this afternoon. I don't know if it'll go into Monday or not. And we're hoping that Scott Drexler takes the stand. And that looks like our only the 2 witnesses we're going to have for this, for the ending of this trial.
And just to clarify, we did do an earlier video this morning. If you haven't seen it yet, John Lamb and Andrea Parker were on a video earlier this morning. So we did a mid-morning break video, just a short one if you want to go back and see that. And then there's Andrea Parker's video that she just did a few minutes before we came out here. We were having lunch. We apologize, but we didn't know what was happening yet. But we're having lunch, but here we are again. So you have Andrea Parker's video, mid-morning break video, and now you have this video as well.
Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. If you can, go online, find out how you can impeach Judge Navarro. There's a place on Facebook and different online sites that you can sign that petition to impeach Judge Navarro and get more attention to this. We want all the signatures we can get for that. We do have a large sign out here. We're having a hard time keeping it up today. But we'll have some better stuff maybe Monday. I'm going to go pick up some stuff from Home Depot or Lowe's to build a better stand for Monday. We'll be back down here on Monday. There will be no court tomorrow. We'll try to have you an update if we can this evening to let you know. There's some very exciting stuff happening in the courtroom. We're glad to be here observing and reporting on this.
How many people are here today? I noticed a big crowd today.
I counted 28 in the courtroom on our side. 28 people today.
And who's out here right now with David Fleeman.
That's a pretty large group. That's one of the largest groups we've had today.
And a little while since the guys were here from the south, yeah.
But we can still use more. We want that courtroom filled next week. And I know there's more people coming from Colorado. They're going to be here Monday. I got messages.
There are people out there reading the transcripts and saying that Andrea and yourself are not reporting accurately what's happening in the court, which I know is a total lie because I'm witnessing with you guys often. So if you want to know the truth, if you're questioning the multiple observers that have been reporting here off and on, and some very consistently like Andrea Parker, if you want to know the entire truth, or from Sherry Duvall, I would recommend you to be here. I think the more court observers that we have will definitely show those people online criticizing or blatantly lying about what our efforts are doing as far as our court observations, blatantly lying about it. The more court observers that we have now at this point to confirm what we're seeing is true and accurate, what we're seeing and hearing is true and accurate, and that we are reporting it truthfully and accurately.
And we're doing it as firsthand.
Yeah,
we're doing it. We're in the courtroom witnessing this. So you can't get it no better than that. We encourage you to come down here and witness it yourself firsthand and see what's going on. Yeah. Don't listen to what's online out there from people that have not been here.
Yeah.
So
and the mainstream media, once again, still not reporting.
No mainstream media here. So
people are asking if Eric is going to be able to tell his full story.
We're praying that he can, but a lot of it's being kept. They are not allowing his full story to be out there. They are keeping so much of it out. He cannot talk about they're calling the BLM officers victims. So anything that's doing with that, the threat from the BLM officers, how the BLM officers pointed guns, knocked down Margaret Houston, tased Ammon Bundy, arrested Dave Bundy, none of those things can be talked about. The snipers on the Mesa, they're trying to keep that from being talked about right now as we're talking. So all of this stuff is trying to be kept out of Eric Parker's testimony, which goes to his state of mind and the reason he went there. And that's why we need everyone here to support these guys, to show that they give them the courage to continue on speaking the truth and getting this out in the courtroom. And this is Judge Navarro's court. She's trying to hide all this evidence. Steve Myrie's right along with them, objecting to all this and not allowing none of this to happen. We want you here to witness it with us. So that's all I have to say for now. We'll be back hopefully this evening, trying to give you another full update on the rest of the day. So thank you and God bless.